Wondery Plus subscribers can listen to Morbid early and ad-free. Join Wondery Plus in the Wondery app or on Apple Podcasts.
You're listening to a Morbid Network podcast.
Redacted, Declassified Mysteries is a new podcast hosted by me, Luke LaManna. Each week, I dive into the hidden truths behind the world's most powerful institutions, from covert government experiments to bizarre assassination attempts. Follow Redacted on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, weirdos, I'm Ash.
And I'm Elena.
And this is Morbid.
Super morbid. Here we are.
Hey.
How are you, everybody?
I am hopped up on espresso at this current moment.
I love that. I love that for you.
I went back to my brown sugar and oat milkshake and espresso, and I'm like,
Ooh, I missed that.
yeah, forget stomach problems. Who cares?
And you know what? Fall's a-coming. And that feels very fall.
Do you feel like...
I know it's only August, not even.
No, it's pre-October.
It is.
Do you feel, though, like today feels very fallish?
It does. It has the vibe.
Yeah.
And then all the stores have Halloween stuff out.
Yes, exactly.
So I'm feeling real. I'm with it.
I had to go for a drive today because Drew did something silly and I had to go pick something up from him. But the drive just felt very fallish to me.
It does. It's got the vibe. And I just feel like as soon as the Halloween stuff comes out, I'm like, all right, spooky season's here, everybody.
I know, me too.
It's officially here.
Actually, now that I'm thinking of it, last night I had a dream about the leaves changing. And then I woke up this morning and I was so sad that the leaves didn't change.
I know. I love green as much as the next gal. But
I'm like Michelle.
ready.
I'm like Michelle Visage when it comes to green. Unless we're talking like green.
like green. Like you know green.
You're not a green.
Yeah, I want it to change. I want Massachusetts fall. I want foliage. I want I want fall festivals. I want pumpkins all over my porch.
I want to drive 2 hours just to see some better leaves.
Yes, that still look the same. But
Exactly.
There's like more of them, I guess.
It just feels better.
Yeah, everybody feels me, and you know what? If we all just work together, we can have Halloween this year. So
Yeah, I hope so.
Right now, it's not looking great, but we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out, everybody.
We have each other.
We do. We have each other.
I can come here in Halloween.
But I would really like to go to a haunted house, everybody. So let's...
Oh my god, I want to go to a haunted house.
We're all in this together. Let's make that happen for us. That's what we're all working towards.
Yeah.
A haunted house.
Please.
That's all.
Please.
Let us work towards that.
Just saying, okay?
Just saying.
All right. So, should we tell them what we're going to talk about today, even though they already clicked on the episode?
Yes. And also, just quickly, if you hear like a weed whacker in the
fuck that
background... You know, I got neighbors, and these neighbors really don't appreciate that I'm recording at any given time during the day or night. So,
and that man is always weed whacking.
He's
we were just
whacking
saying,
so many weeds.
like, you don't have that many weeds, sir.
Like you said, he's not doing it right if he's got to do it that much.
Well, he's not doing it right either, because he just goes, and then like it pauses for 30 minutes, and then it's like,
so he's just whacking it for a second. That sounded terrible, but
LOL.
I don't know his life. Maybe he is, but if you hear that in the background, I'm sorry. I'll do what I can to drown it out. But you know, this is what we get for being in suburbia. You know,
suburbia. All right. Well, today we're going to be talking about Charles Schmid, aka the Pied Piper of Tucson.
I literally didn't know what you said at first when you were like, Charles Schmid.
Charles Schmid.
Like, what is that?
It's hard to say because it's like Charles, and then you have to like pick it up with like another
Charles Schmid.
Charles Schmid. Like, it's like your
hard.
voice doesn't want to stop saying the first S.
And the Pied Piper.
The Pied Piper.
I know this one, and woof.
Yeah. Weird story.
Here we are,
that
everybody.
Was a fairy tale, I guess. Or
it's really gross.
It's like folklore.
Yeah.
What is it? Who knows?
I don't know.
This is about Charles.
You know it. Well, you get what we're talking about.
Hi. This is about Charles, and he was born on July 8th, 1942. Long time ago. Long time ago in Tucson, Arizona. Now, Charles's biological mother wasn't married at the time when Charles was born.
Oh, scandalous.
The most scandal. It was super duper frowned upon back then, as we all know. Things sucked back then. So she was like, yeah, I have to put you up for adoption because I'm unwed.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's escalation.
Yeah, it is. But, he did get adopted by an amazing family.
Oh.
Charles Sr. and Catherine Schmid were the ones to adopt him. They were super well-to-do people, and they made a very good living because they owned the Hillcrest Nursing Home in Tucson. Charles was also their only child, so they had, all that dough.
He doted on them.
Oh,
or they doted on him.
They doted on him, not vice versa.
Yeah, not vice versa. I haven't had an espresso yet.
Have some because I'm like, whoa. But they spoiled the crap out of him. His allowance, I read, was $300 a month. And I love to check out what the purchasing power would be today.
You'll love it.
A super chill $3,382 a month.
For an allowance.
Just for doing jack shit.
Meanwhile, that's a great paycheck a month.
Literally.
Doing an actual job.
Actual labor. Yeah, this dude was making serious coin just existing.
Wow.
But I think that this was kind of one of those families that looked really happy and prestigious from the outside, but there was a lot going on behind closed doors, specifically between Charles and his father, because they would always be arguing. And most of the time, it seems like they were arguing because Charles was never doing well in school, even though he was really intelligent and described as super intelligent by his own teachers and classmates.
One of those not living up to his potential.
Exactly. But where Charles did live up to his potential was in gymnastics. He was an amazing gymnast, apparently.
Wow.
And he was on his high school's team. He was actually the reason why they went to the state championships one year. So random,
that's a very random fact.
Random talent.
Yeah.
And then, so he was super good, but then for some reason during senior year, or when he got to senior year, he just didn't want to be a gymnast anymore, and he quit.
So see, potential again, just wasting it.
Yeah, it's like a theme here.
It's a pattern.
Now that same year, he was also caught stealing from the machine shop at school. He was stealing some tools, so he got suspended. But Charles took that punishment and decided to personally extend it and just never go back to classes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He was you know what? I need to be punished further.
I think he was just I'm good with school, so I'm good. I'm gonna dip. And it was literally right before he graduated. He was very close to graduating. It was just, why don't you hang on tight?
What a strange guy so far.
And it only gets stranger.
It's why wouldn't you just finish it out?
I don't know, but I feel there's people like that in my graduating class that were just bye, and I was but we're so close.
Yeah, you might as well this.
I don't want to be here either, but
it's weird.
It's a month away, so
it's leaving one bite of the apple, and you're just take that last bite.
Yeah, exactly.
Why throwing it? Just finish it.
Weird analogy, but
I don't know. I like apples. I really want one. It's fall.
Okay,
it's fall in my brain.
It's fall here. But yeah, somehow his parents just still agreed to let him stay with them. He actually lived in his own place that was on their property, and they continued to give him that insane allowance, and also allowed him a new car and a motorcycle. Now, wow. I don't know if he bought those things with his allowance, himself. I doubt it, because he wasn't really into, spending his own money. I think, were these graduation gifts that maybe they just couldn't return?
They bought him, hoping he was going to finish that whole thing out.
Yeah, couldn't get store credit, I guess.
Yeah.
But, you're 18, get a job or finish school. You've got two choices.
Yeah.
But when he wasn't slumming off his parents, he would drive his vehicles around and hit on girls while hanging out with his buds. Just guys being dudes.
Yeah, bros being man.
Exactly. Now, even though a lot of people referred to him as a loner, he had a small group of friends, and he would hang out with them most of the time. So he always had people with him, it seemed, and I was how did they describe him as a loner then? Because he's constantly surrounded by a couple of these characters.
But maybe he just I don't know. Sometimes it's an introverted extrovert. You know what I mean? You hang out with people, but you'd really rather be alone, and you kind of make it known. Maybe that's why.
That's actually how I feel. I became an introverted extrovert.
Yeah, I think I rubbed off on you a lot too.
I think you did. I think this pandemic has just made me a mini you, but not completely. But yeah, so Paul Groff was one of Charles's best friends that actually lived with him for a while. Paul himself was known around town as a pretty bad dude.
Uh-oh.
He ended up in prison at a pretty young age because he just, killed a man during an armed robbery.
Oh, you just shot a man in Reno just to see how it felt.
He literally did.
Wow.
Except in Tucson.
Yeah. So. Shot a man in Tucson.
So he ended up in prison for
Jeez Louise.
For a bit. I think he only got 5 years is what I read. And I was what? But he was a juvenile, so all that weird.
Just a spell in juvie.
Just a vacation.
Yeah.
Now, the two other closest guys to Charles were called John Saunders, or Sanders. I think it's Saunders. There's a U.
Sounds fancy.
Yeah. And Richie Bruns. Now, they were younger than him, and almost everyone in Charles's circle was younger than him, and they all referred to him as either Smitty or the Romeo of Tucson.
Get out. Immediately leave the room.
Like, known around town as the Romeo of Tucson.
Leave the planet.
And
what?
Now, this is maybe I got a type. Maybe he's just not my type, but I don't understand.
Maybe he's just not my type.
Maybe he's just not for me, but see,
look him up.
The thing is, I could see where he would be handsome if he didn't do all the things that I'm going to tell you he did to his appearance and to other people.
No, thank you.
Right?
No, thank you.
Right?
Nope.
And he's very strange and odd, and that's fine, but like not when you pair it with murder.
Yeah.
So, but we'll get there. Now, eventually he would be known as the Pied Piper of Tucson, and I'm sure you'll see why. Because, like I said,
know the tale.
He likes to hang out around with a younger crowd. I also feel like there's always one guy from your high school class that loves to hang out with the younger people.
Yeah, because it gives them some sense of like power and authority.
Yeah, and
that's I'm the cool guy.
And that is exactly what Charles had going on.
Yep.
In a quiet suburb, a community is shattered by the death of a beloved wife and mother. But this tragic loss of life quickly turns into something even darker. Her husband had tried to hire a hitman on the dark web to kill her. And she wasn't the only target. Because buried in the depths of the internet is the kill list, a cache of chilling documents containing names, photos, addresses, and specific instructions for people's murders. This podcast is the true story of how I ended up in a race against time to warn those whose lives were in danger. And it turns out, convincing a total stranger someone wants them dead is not easy. Follow Kill List on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to Kill List and more Exhibit C true crime shows like Morbid early and ad-free right now by joining Wondery Plus. Check out Exhibit C in the Wondery app for all your true crime listening.
So when he turned 18, he decided it was time for a makeover.
Hell yeah.
A new look.
Of course.
Stacy and Clinton were like, that's not what you wear.
New
and
year,
that's
new me.
Not what you look like. So he dyed his hair pitch black, and he started wearing makeup that literally, if you Google Charles Schmid like makeup, every article you read will describe his makeup as pancake makeup.
Pancake makeup.
Every article. And he also added a really large mole on his cheek.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, that was painted on because he wanted to look meaner. Because you know how moles just make people so mean.
I was just going to say, I don't generally look at people with a mole and be like, who stay clear of them.
Marilyn Monroe, a
so
bitch.
Aggressive.
Terrifying.
Like what? Like Cindy Crawford, I'm not like, she'll cut
Meanie Bobini.
Yeah, like don't go near her, she'll break you in two.
It's like, no, usually it's like a beauty mark kind of deal. Like, it makes you look like, I don't even know.
And the thing
I don't even really get that.
He didn't draw like a Cindy Crawford beauty mark or like a Marilyn Monroe. He drew like a giant mole on the side of his face.
It's literally just a large circle, a large black circle on his face.
I'm very confused. I was going to ask about that because in some pictures I was seeing, I was like, he doesn't have that.
Yeah, I think he probably couldn't do that anymore when he got to prison.
Yeah,
so they were probably like,
sense.
You can't have a sharp object.
Oh, he has a very punchable face.
It's the most.
Yeah.
And you'll only want to punch him as this unfolds.
Yeah, I hate him already.
Now, he was also pretty short in stature. I don't know if you have a picture over there of exactly like what he looked like from head to toe.
Yeah.
He was only about 5'3".
Wow.
Now, he probably looks a little taller in those pictures that you're looking at because he would wear cowboy boots that were too big for him.
I literally just opened a picture of him with cowboy boots.
The exact one. He's like in his prison jumpsuit.
And he's like,
yeah, he's mad.
He's got like a duck face.
Yeah, before the duck face. But yeah, he would wear cowboy boots that were too big so that he could stuff rags and folded up cans into them before putting them on. So that way he would add a few inches to his height.
They're like DIY lifts.
But then he would walk around like very weird because he was
probably crunching on cans
and like balancing on cans and rags. So he would literally like, I don't even know what is this movement that I'm like. He would walk around like this.
Just that bad swagger,
swagger, but like he was basically just trying not to fall all the time.
Just a wobble.
But his friend Richie was like, he would rather look crazy walking than like walk around short.
And it's like, honey, just own the height. If you have everything, like, you can make that height is nothing. If you're like a cool person and you're
right,
like.
Look at Napoleon. He did a whole deal.
But then again, I'm looking at him and I'm like, you don't have anything else. So it's like, that's,
Exactly.
But that's the strangest way to remedy short stature that I have ever seen.
Like, why not just add platforms inside of the shoes? Yeah. Like, you have the money.
Or just like, don't be like terrible and don't draw a giant mole on the side of your face and don't have zero like redeemable qualities. And then short stature doesn't matter at all to anyone.
Write that all down. Don't do any of that.
Just don't do any of that.
No. And also it just sounds like really uncomfortable. Like, why do you want to walk around on cans all day? But he was also using a clothespin to stretch out his bottom lip. So I don't really think comfort was like his thing.
He has a lot going on.
The most. One might say the most, and one might be correct.
Yeah.
Now, he did that bottom lip thing with the clothespin, and you can see in certain pictures his lips look a lot fuller than others. Like, they look poutier.
Yeah.
And it was because Elvis Presley had that kind of, like, pout going on at the time.
Oh, he thinks he's, like...
He loved Elvis Presley. That's what he was going for.
You didn't make it.
Yeah.
You didn't make it there.
It's just a lot to unpack.
You didn't do it.
He was also so obsessed. I mean, obviously, with everything I just said, he was so obsessed with his image. But Richie said that he would stand in front of the mirror for hours just trying out different looks and mannerisms.
Wow. So we've got like a real narcissist here.
An absolute narcissist. This is like a total Ash Kell side note right here. You're going to be like, what's the correlation? But last night I found out that J-Lo does the same thing. She gets ready like hours and hours before an event and just stands in front of the mirror and tests out different angles to make sure she looks good from them all.
Wow.
Now, she didn't say that herself, so I don't know if that's true, but I did hear that somewhere. I was reading it. It wasn't on TikTok. I actually did
was it on TikTok?
No, I actually read it somewhere.
I mean, I believe it because she always looks great.
She does look amazing.
So, I mean, if she came prepared to play, I believe that.
To play and slay.
I believe that.
And it's like, Richie said that Charles did all that, would stand in front of the mirror for hours, but I'm like, you still look all kinds of tomfoolery walking around town.
It didn't work for him. He's still very busted up.
But it's weird because the girls were in love with him.
I mean, a different time, I suppose.
It was like the misunderstood youths going through their like 60s emo phase that were really into him.
That's the thing. It's like, can I say that like we've all been attracted to someone that you look back on and you're like, what?
You mean every person I ever dated before Drew? Correct. Exactly. We joke about it all the time. We do. I got better sight apparently.
Yeah. You're just waiting for Drew. That's all it was.
I was. But yeah, so Smitty would hang out with all these younger kids, and I think obviously that added to it. He was like the older cool dude who walked around on tin cans, I guess.
Yeah.
But the guys wanted to emulate his vibe for some reason, and the girls wanted to be next in line for a date. It truly was a wild time.
Wow.
No, he would tell all of his young female admirers that he had some kind of connection to the mafia because he thought that was super cool back then. He would also tell them that he was terminally ill, obviously to like make them fall harder for him, I guess. And then once they were falling for him, he would tell them that he knew 100 ways to make love.
I hate this.
I hate it so much.
I hate this so much.
Imagine you're on a date with this dude and you're driving around in his, I don't know, Thunderbird, and he's like, hey, baby, I know 100 ways to make love.
Oh my God. I would hate it.
The road rash I would get from rolling out of that car at full speed. Peace out.
Hate it.
Peace out.
So much.
So that's what he would say to the ladies.
To the ladies.
And to the dudes, he would turn around and say he was continually like, you know, getting it from all these girls. And he would describe these like crazy sexcapades to them. And I'm sure they honestly like didn't go down like he bragged they did, but he was always telling wild stories of his exploits.
Wow, Charles.
He is such a conundrum.
He's an enigma wrapped in a conundrum.
And cash.
And tied with something scary. Cash. I don't know. A snake.
A snake and tied with tin cans.
Exactly.
But people started to see a different side of Charles pretty abruptly. Now, it was May 31st, 1964, and he was hanging out with his girlfriend, Mary Ray French, so you know she's an evil son of a bitch. She's got 3 names.
Yep, there it is.
John Saunders was there as well. He's also an evil son, but I guess he only has 2 names.
Cool.
And while they were all hanging out at Charles's place, Charles was just like, I really want to kill someone, and I think we could get away with it.
Oh, okay.
I want to kill a girl tonight, and I think we can get away with it.
All right.
He was 22 years old at this point. Like,
I'd be like, you know, it's time. It's time that we just go our separate ways.
It's time for me to dip. It's actually my curfew right now. Gotta go by.
Yeah, it's time to end this night.
Now, not only did he want to kill someone, he knew exactly who he wanted to kill. He wanted to kill Aline Rowe. Aline was 15 years old, living with her mom on the same street as Charles's girlfriend, Mary French. She was a really good student, and after high school, she would have gone straight to college. Her dream was to become an oceanographer, which I'm like, you're just the coolest.
Seriously.
And she looks like the coolest. I'm like, oh, I love you. Now, Aline's parents had recently gotten divorced, so it was just the 2 of them in the house, her mother and her. They were super close, and lately, though, there were a couple things that were concerning her mom, Norma. One thing was that Aline seemed to be very interested in the topic of death, and specifically what happens after we die. So she was talking a lot about it and like reading and everything about it leading up to the night of May 31st, almost like it was like a premonition that she had, you know? And she said that if reincarnation was what really happened to people, that she wanted to come back as a cat, which I was like, me too, actually.
I was going to say, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, cats live the best life. Ask Franklin and Lux. Now, the other thing that was really concerning Norma was that Aline was hanging out with Mary French a lot, and she didn't think Mary was a good influence.
So she knew her, like hung out with her.
Oh, yeah, like they literally hung out.
Wow.
Now, Norma had caught the girls in her backyard a few times smoking cigarettes, and when Mary wasn't hanging out with Aline, she was with John Saunders or Charles Schmid. And Norma had this gut feeling about Charles. There was just something about him that she didn't trust, like a mother's instinct.
I bet it was his face.
It absolutely was, and more specifically, his eyes.
Yeah.
Because there was one day that he and John came by asking for Aline, but she wasn't home. And Norma later said the look in Charles's eyes that day literally scared her to death, like a grown-ass woman.
I feel that because there's pictures that I'm looking at, and his eyes really do have like...
They're empty.
Yeah.
Like, you know, everybody always says that, but then you look at this guy's eyes and you're like, no, those are empty eyes.
There's like a darkness.
There is. There's a darkness about his whole aura.
There is. Like he really does give off a really scary vibe.
He does. I think there was a lot of like mental health issues going on there that maybe just never got diagnosed because he never really did get diagnosed with anything.
Oy.
So I'm not sure exactly what it was about Aline that had Charles so intent upon killing her. Some of the sources that I read said that she had stood up John Saunders on a date or turned him down when he asked. But
how dare she?
I know, like free will. Who wants that?
Yeah.
But either way, on the night of May 31st, 1964, Charles, John, and Mary French pulled onto Aline's street, driving Charles's car, and Mary headed over to Aline's house. Now, Aline was home alone that night, and she headed to bed early after wrapping her hair up in curlers for school the next day.
I know, because she has great hair.
Amazing
like
hair.
Really great hair.
Now, she had a big test the next day at school and she wanted to go to sleep early. And she was sleeping when Norma checked on her before heading into work. She worked as a nurse and she was doing an overnight shift. But Mary tapped on Aline's bedroom window and it must have awoke Aline. And Mary was like, oh, do you want to come out and drink beer with me and Smitty and John in the desert? Like, we're just heading out to the desert for a good time.
Say no.
Say no. Aline did agree. And once they were out there, Mary allegedly sat in the car while Charles and John walked Aline down to a stream bed. This is a huge trigger warning for rape. Just gonna give you a second to skip forward if you'd like to. They made her undress when they got down there, and they both raped her. Jesus. When they were done with that, they just started beating her over the head with rocks. And when they were done with that, Charles walked back up to the car, and according to Mary, quote, he got into the car and he said, we killed her. I love you very much. He kissed me. He was breathing real hard and seemed excited.
I don't even know what to say to that.
Like,
that's true callousness and evil. That is just true evil.
To just sit, I can't imagine my boyfriend, I can't even say Drew because I like can't even picture that. Like if I had a different boyfriend and he walked up to the car and was like, we killed her, I love you, mwah, mwah.
Like thanks so much.
I'd hop in the driver's seat and yeet out of there.
And that you brought her to them.
But I think she knew what she was doing.
Yeah.
Because people who were friends with, or even just knew Mary French, said that she was so in love with Smitty that she would have done anything for her. Or excuse me, for him.
Horrific.
Hotshot Australian attorney Nicola Gaba was born into legal royalty. Her specialty? Representing some of the city's most infamous gangland criminals. However, while Nicola held the underworld's darkest secrets, the most dangerous secret was her own.
She's going to all the major groups within Melbourne's underworld, and she's informing on them all.
I'm Marcia Clark, host of the new podcast, Informants Lawyer X. In my long career in criminal justice as a prosecutor and defense attorney, I've seen some crazy cases, and this one belongs right at the top of the list.
She was addicted to the game she had created. She just didn't know how to stop.
Now, through dramatic interviews and access, I'll reveal the truth behind one of the world's most shocking legal scandals. Listen to Informants Lawyer X exclusively on Wondery Plus. Join Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. And listen to more Exhibit C true crime shows early and ad-free right now.
Now, a lot of people described Mary as frumpy. That was like the number one word used to describe her.
Not the name you really want to be saddled with.
No, if anybody called me frumpy, I'd punch her.
No, I would not be psyched.
No. And they said that she was probably just so happy that Smitty paid her any mind at all. So when he grabbed a shovel from the trunk and told Mary that she needed to come bury the body with him, she scurried along after him.
No, there's never an excuse.
No.
There's never an excuse. I don't give if he's an asshole and wow, he's being nice to you suddenly.
She later said that the three of them took turns digging a grave for Aline, and when they were finished, they headed back up to the car, wiped it down for prints, all came up with alibis, and just drove back home.
And here she is in like her curlers.
Yep.
Like that just really...
I know. I had to add that part in because she literally went out with her curlers.
That adds like a little something to
it. It does. I don't know what it is,
because it's just plans for tomorrow.
Exactly.
Like it's just I'm setting my hair so I can wake up with curly hair tomorrow, and you're not going to wake up tomorrow.
No, it's terrible.
Like that just makes it really
real. And the other thing was that Mary French wasn't even his only girlfriend. He had like tons of girlfriends at one time.
Of course he did.
He bought two of his girlfriends, Mary and another girl at that time, $13 engagement rings, and asked them to marry him. And then the intent was that he was going to have them go to work and open up a joint bank account, and they were going to put their earnings in the bank account. So that's like another way that he was making money. He also once sent Mary to his mother's house with like this crazy elaborate story that she was pregnant when she wasn't. What? So that like they were able to get married, and they tried to get married, but she wasn't old enough, so they couldn't.
Oh my God.
But he was just like, that's just like another brief like look into his craziness.
He just like, it seems like he just loves chaos.
He does.
Chaos
and he creates
and pain and manipulation and lying and
and he just wants, the thing is, he wants to be the center of everybody's world, but he doesn't have anybody at the center of his world other than himself.
And he doesn't know how to care for anyone besides himself.
No, he doesn't. Because we'll see that one of his victims, he really did strangely care a lot about them. Oh. But like in a very strange way.
In the only way that he
he knew how.
do. Yeah. Which is probably not the way that any of us know.
No, I hope not. Now, strangely enough, as soon as Aline went missing, her dad told her mother, now remember they were divorced, but they were still in contact. He said that he just had this weird feeling that she was murdered and left in the desert. He just had that feeling.
Whoa.
Now, she did like to take walks in the desert by herself at night, which I was like, I'm sorry, what?
Oh, no.
But I guess she just did that. I mean, if you live in Arizona, there is deserts everywhere, so.
Well, in certain decades, this was much easier to do than now.
Exactly. It's the 60s.
Now you can't even walk down your, like, suburban residential street as a woman.
Like, can't even walk down your driveway alone at night. But, so yeah. It's not out of the realm that was a possibility because she was in the desert all the time.
And parents know their kids, man.
They do. So Norma went to the police and she told them everything. And they told her Aline probably just ran away.
Yeah. totally. That's always really good when that's the first thing that they think of.
No.
And it's also like, I need statistics. Tell me how often you're right.
These girls just run away.
When you immediately go to that. How many girls are just running away from perfectly fine...
Right.
Like
girls that are doing well in school, that have plans to go to college, that were just studying for a big test the next
girls
day.
that just set their hair into curlers for the next day for their big test that they went to sleep early for. How many of those are running away in the middle of the night? Just let me know.
So Norma was like, yeah, you guys, I'm going to do my own investigation.
Hell yeah, Norma.
And which is funny that we had 2 cases this week like that now. So she was like, so she would go around talking to Aleen's friends, and she would record every single piece of information that she got into a tape recorder.
Norma.
Not only did she do that, but she had this gut feeling about Aleen's disappearance. Something inside of her told her that Charles Schmid was responsible. And obviously we know she's correct.
Again, parents.
So she started following him around at night to see what he was up to. And she said, she was like, I was terrified of him. Like, I was scared that he would find me and do something to me. But Aleen was my daughter, or is my daughter. I need to find out what happened to her.
What a badass.
So she would just follow him around at night in her car. And this will break your heart. She had this gut feeling that he was responsible for whatever happened to Aleen. But just in case Aleen did run away, she left her outside light on every single night in case Aleen came home.
Oh, man. That stuff really always destroys me.
Just those little things like that, because it puts you in her shoes. It's like she's so convinced that, and being realistic, unfortunately, that her daughter probably was murdered, but she's a mom, and there's always
there
that one little piece of you that's like, but maybe I'm wrong.
It's like Tara Calico's parents, Patty and John. They
putting the Christmas gifts and the birthday gifts
in her room, waiting for her to come back.
Because imagine if you are wrong, and then you're like, so.
And you just think of that. They probably just are constantly thinking of that moment where they walk back in the door.
And honestly, that's probably
what they're living on.
I was just going to say that's probably what they're living for.
Yeah, that's what you survive with.
It's like so sad. Ugh. Now, the case went cold because the police didn't give it, apparently. So a year after Aleen was killed, Charles was dating a 17-year-old girl named Gretchen Fritz. Gretchen went to a private school, and Charles actually saw her at like a local park one day. That's how they met.
Okay.
Gretchen's father was super well liked in the community. He was seen as like a community leader. He also worked as a heart surgeon, and it was said that at the time he was one of the nation's leading heart surgeons.
Jeez.
So just like a casual dude,
Oh, and she's gorgeous.
Gorgeous. Now, she wasn't exactly well liked, though. She didn't get along with the girls that she went to school with because she didn't really have a lot in common with them. She was also known to be like a troublemaker. She kind of seemed like she liked to stir the pot a little bit. Like she showed up to a school dance with these 2 guys that were dressed like very boho. And at the time, that was not good at her private school. Like they were like,
kind of hilarious.
I love it. Excuse me. But one of her teachers said that she was, quote, erratic, subversive, and a psychopathic liar.
Whoa.
Yeah, so just that.
That took a turn.
It did. It truly did.
Just okay.
Now, after spotting her at the park, Charles followed her home because romance, and he knocked on the door and he said, "Don't I know you?"
Oh, no. The answer is always no.
No.
Even if you do know them. No.
No, I don't know you.
You don't know me.
Gretchen had seen him in the park looking at her, and she thought that the fact that he was taking interest in her like this, it was so romantic. So that day they spent an hour talking with each other, and after that they were completely inseparable. Mostly because Gretchen would not let Smitty Boy out of her sight. Everyone, including Charles himself, which I like his opinion, but everyone else said that she was super controlling, and she would call him every second of the day if they weren't together to find out where he was and what he was doing.
Damn.
Now, Charles not only felt like Gretchen was getting too clingy, but she also admitted to him that while she was on vacation in California, she, quote, went out on him. Which means, like, obviously she cheated on him.
I went out on him.
I went out on you. So he lost it, and he told her he was going to break up with her. But the problem with that was that he had also told her that he was responsible for Aleen's murder. Not only did he tell her, he drove her out to Aleen's gravesite to show her, to see if she loved him.
What?
He was like, I'm going to show you something to make sure you love me. And she said she would.
I'd be like, no. I don't want to know any of this.
At that point, I'd be like, oh my God, yeah, I'm so in love with you. And then I would go to the police and I'd be like, so I accidentally fell in love with this guy that's a murderer. Please help me.
Whoops.
So yeah. He told her all about that, and then he was like, yeah, I'm going to break up with you. And she was like, cool, I'm going to tell everybody that you murdered Aline then.
Oh, don't do that.
And
don't say it.
Some people said that Gretchen knew of more than just Aline's murder and that there was actually one other murder. Now, there was like huge rumors in town that there was an additional murder. But on August 16th, 1965, Gretchen and her little sister Wendy headed out to see an Elvis film at the drive-in. Gretchen was driving, and it would be the last night that anybody saw those two girls alive again.
Oh my God.
Now, the police, who apparently didn't think it was strange that 3 girls of very similar ages in the same area had turned up missing within a year. And they told Gretchen and Wendy's father that the girls probably just ran away.
All right, guys, it can't be your go-to. That's not the default here. We can't just go, they ran away.
Like, we now have 3 girls around the same age, I'm going to say it again, around the same age, in the same area that have turned up missing within a year.
And isn't her little sister's like, how old? Like 13?
Yes, 13 years old.
Come on. Come on, guys.
Really? So Gretchen and Wendy's father was not taking that answer, just like Aline's mother. He actually hired a PI named Bill Helig, I think is how you say it, to find out either where they had gone or what happened to them. Now, Bill had multiple people working under him at all times to get any clues, and one night they found Gretchen's car parked behind the Flamingo Hotel in Tucson. Inside the car was her purse filled with money.
Ooh.
So that tells you something.
That's a little concerning.
Now, what had happened was that somehow Charles had tracked Gretchen and her sister Wendy down and convinced them to come back to his house. Now, one night he told his pal Richie there exactly what had happened. Richie later wrote a book about this all because, as we'll find out, Richie pulls the sound alarm. Now, the book he wrote is called I, a Squealer. Because he squealed.
That's the best name.
It's the best
I've ever heard.
It's like a super quick read. I think it was
a Squealer.
I, a Squealer. It was a quick read. It was like maybe $10 on Amazon, and it's got some good info, so go read it.
I'm pretty obsessed with it myself.
But so in the book, he said that one night he was just sitting with Charles in the living room, like in Charles's living room, and Charles blurted out, "You know I killed her?"
Oh.
And then he went on to say, "You know where? I did it here in the living room."
I don't know.
Why would I know that?
Why would I know that?
Richie probably did know that, though, because we'll see.
Everybody knew that?
Everybody knew that. He said, "First I killed Gretchen. Then Wendy was still going, huh, huh, huh," like, I think making whimpering noises. He then strangled Wendy as well and went on to say, "Then I took the bodies and I put them in the trunk of the car. I put the bodies in the most obvious place I could think of because I just didn't care anymore. Then I ditched the car and I wiped it clean." What?
I don't like him at all.
It's
this
so
is like very upsetting.
It's so weird because he loved Gretchen. Like, he quote unquote loved her. He was like obsessed with her. The two of them were literally obsessed with each other. And then he just snapped on her the second that she was going to go against him.
This happens though in these kind of
like these diabolical relationships.
It's like Ian Brady and Myra Hindley and stuff.
It reminded me of that.
Yeah, the relationship just doesn't make any sense, and you're like, do they care about each other? Do they hate each other? I can't decide.
I think it's good that we don't understand it.
Yeah, I don't want to understand, so that's good.
Yeah. Now, like I said, Richie was not shocked hearing this news because he already knew that Charles had killed Aline. They had been hunting together one day, and Charles just decided to take him out to the desert and show him exactly where Aline was buried.
Guys, can we all like maybe go to the police?
Yeah.
I mean, I know the police aren't doing a great job so far.
No, but maybe if you give them some concrete evidence, like where she's buried.
Yeah, maybe say like, I know where the grave is.
Exactly. Now, there was like a lot of people in town. Now, I don't know exactly who saw the grave other than Gretchen and Richie, but it seems like everybody knew that this was going on and didn't tell the police.
Oh my God, and her poor family.
And there was like a ton of kids that came forward and said even if they did know, they wouldn't have squealed on Smitty.
What?
Because he was like the Pied Piper in town.
Guys!
It's crazy.
He murders people.
They didn't care.
That's insane.
It's like this weird like phenomenon that happened.
I was going to say this weird collective psychosis that everybody's just like, it's okay that he's brutally murdering teenage girls.
But that's exactly why he's called...
He's got that groovy mole on his face.
Yeah, you know? He walks on tin cans.
Yeah.
He's always clinging and clanging when he's around. But that's why he ended up being called the Pied Piper, because he ended up just fucking stealing all Tucson's kids.
Literally.
Like, wrapping them underneath his spell.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's bananas. He shows Richie the grave. But now Richie was scared that Charles had just left the two girls' bodies out there in the open. So together they headed out there to bury the bodies.
No.
He said that Charles took him out into the desert again, a different location this time than where Aline had been buried. They walked out into the distance and he saw the bodies. He said they buried them and they headed home. Charles made him do like all this weird like touch one of the girls' shoes. He had him throw one of the girls' shoes so that his prints were on things too. So Richie was like, okay, like I can't go to the police because who's to say he's not going to turn around and pin this on me and my prints are now on them.
Dude.
Everyone was being an idiot.
That's just dumb as fuck.
No, that's literally just the dumbest.
I have zero sympathy for you, Richie.
The absolute dumbest. Now, a few days later, after they had gone out to the desert together, Richie got a call from Charles saying that he was going to be having a party and like, would you come? So Richie had been dating this girl called Kathy Morath at the time, and he had been so convinced that she was going to become Charles's next victim that he was like borderline stalking her to make sure that she was safe. Now, if he was going to go to this party, he would know exactly where Charles was and at least have some kind of peace of mind for one night.
Oh, no.
So, like, he knows where Charles is so that Kathy's safe.
Yeah.
Because Richie's main concern became Kathy, like, to the point of, like, obsession. So
this
he was
is
like,
a very rickety plan.
It's crazy.
It's not concrete.
No. And when he got there was not a party going on at all.
Of course there wasn't.
Charles wasn't even there.
No,
so he
of course
starts to panic.
But he's trying to get you away from Kathy.
You would think.
He's diabolical.
You would think.
Oh, man.
This takes a twist no one would expect. So there was just a small group of new friends that Charles had been hanging out with, just hanging out in the living room. But all of a sudden, Charles walked in. They had been there for like maybe like 20, 30 minutes. He said it was a while before Charles came back. I'm like, you guys were all just waiting for him? Like, this guy had like power over everybody.
Yeah.
So Charles walks in with these two other guys that Richie had never seen before. And one of them was just like, hey, you're Richie, right? And he was like, uh-huh. Now, he asked if he would go. The man asked, will you go for a ride with us?
No.
So I don't know if Richie thought he was going to go get, like, I don't know if he thought he was getting arrested or if he had any idea what was going on, but he said that he just did what he was told.
Why?
I don't know. In my mind, I was like, I think he thought he was getting arrested.
Richie needs to, like, come on, Richie.
Richie was wild. And
jeez.
Now, so Charles went along for the ride too, but not before telling Richie that these two guys were from the mafia.
Oh, boy.
Now the mafia's involved, y'all.
Oh, boy.
And that they had been coming around lately and asking about Gretchen and Wendy. He told Richie that he had been to the place where they were going and not to worry, they weren't going to get hurt. They just had to talk to them, but not tell them the truth.
Yeah, trust him.
Lie to the mafia. It's a good plan.
Trust me, nothing bad will come of this.
Right. Now, wherever they went that night is a total mystery. It was just like a random apartment building. But there were a lot of men in there whose names would become notorious with the New York Mafia in the years to come. And they were already pretty notorious at the time.
Oh, good.
Now, Charles Bats Battaglia was there. Joseph Joe Bananas Bonanno's son, Salvatore Bonanno, was there. Yes. As well as Joe Bonanno Jr.
Bonanno, I think it might be.
Is it Bonanno?
Yeah, I think it's Bonanno.
Bonanno.
I don't know, though. I might be lying.
Neither do I. But these aren't exactly the guys that you want to question you about the disappearance of two girls that you know for a fact have been murdered and you know exactly where they were murdered and where they currently are right now.
Yeah, if it's the Bonannos I'm thinking of, then yeah, no.
I'm sure it is because these are like the Bonannos.
The Bonannos.
And the Battaglias.
Wow.
Like, I don't want to frown with that. So Richie told them that he had no idea what happened to either girl because he was terrified that if he did, he would maybe be killed by them or get killed by Smitty.
Yeah.
Because Smitty's terrifying. So Charles Smitty Schmid there told them that actually Gretchen had been on vacation to California not too long before her disappearance, and he knew that she had run away there to be with the guy that she had cheated on him with. He said he specifically, because they were like, why do you know that? Like, why are you so confident?
Yeah,
in that?
why she's not telling you that?
And he's like, well, I knew that she wanted to run away, and I actually taught her how to run away before that all happened. And they were like, if she ran away, then why did the police find her car with her purse and money inside of it? And he was like, I told her to do that to like throw the cops off.
Wow, the confidence this guy has.
With the mafia. I'm like...
And in the like most shaky story I've ever heard, he has a lot of confidence telling it to the mafia.
Seriously. But then he f***ed up, obviously. Yeah. And he told them, I wish I could just go out there, because I know that if I was able to go out there and like question people, I'd be able to find her. And so they were like, okay, cool, let's arrange that. Like,
dude, my dude, it's the mafia.
They make happen. That's their whole job.
Your wish is their command.
They literally were like, cool, we'll set that up then.
Yeah.
And they did.
Yeah, of course they did.
But not before Charles went home and called J. Edgar Hoover himself, like tried to get in touch with J. Edgar Hoover.
Just called him up on the phone.
Called the FBI and was like, please help me. I need protection from the mafia. And they were like, yeah, we don't just do that. So, like, we'll come talk to you tomorrow. So they were sending someone
Hang tight, pal. We'll be there tomorrow.
Literally. So they said that they were sending someone, and he was like, whoof.
Woo.
But then the mafia themselves showed up, and they were like, let's go to Cali, buddy. Let's get it.
They were like, we're not going to sleep on this.
Yeah, like, we're bringing you out there.
I know you have an appointment with the FBI tomorrow, but we got to go out there.
I'm like, dude, they've been in your house. You don't think your house is tapped? Like, Jesus.
Wow. The dumb.
They went out to California, but Charles was arrested in California, San Diego to be specific, on August 28th. He was on the beach impersonating an FBI agent. And questioning girls on the beach, obviously trying to pretend that he was trying to find Gretchen and Wendy so that these mafia guys wouldn't take care of him.
This is wild.
It's insane. This story is bananas.
It's bananas.
I was going to say the same thing. So when he was brought to the police station, the police held him there for an hour and a half, and they asked tons of questions about Gretchen and Wendy, because they're like, why are you on a beach pretending to be an FBI agent asking questions about these girls? Like,
you got to answer some questions.
Seems a little weird. But there wasn't enough to hold him on, and actually while they were questioning him, they were notified by the police back in Tucson that he had already been talked to, because he had already been questioned about this previously, because he's the boyfriend. But they were like, no, he's not a suspect. Like, you can let him go.
Man.
Wild. So he was able to be let go, and things quieted down.
These guys always sneak out of these things. They always
really
wiggle
do.
out of them.
But not for long. They
always end up getting caught. But there's always those few times that you're like, he got out of it.
Right.
What?
There's only 9 lives, though, that I know of. So between September and October of 1965, Charles really kept that creepy asshole status on lock. He married a 15-year-old girl.
Charles...
Married a 15-year-old girl named Diana.
My goodness.
Now, Paul, who we had talked about earlier, he shot a guy in Reno.
No, that guy.
Not actually, but
yeah,
he did shoot a man in Tucson. Now, he had been out of prison at some point, and he confronted Charles about the marriage, being like, what are you doing married to a 15-year-old? But she had recently turned 15.
So he's like, hey, you big gross.
He was fresh out of the 14s.
I know I just shot a man in Tucson, but this is real bad.
It's different. That was an accident, I guess. But he was like, you're 23. What are you doing married to this little girl?
Yeah, you're gross.
Apparently, when Paul confronted him, Charles punched a hole through the wall, ran out of his own house in his underwear, and started jumping back and forth over the fence, screaming, God is gonna punish me, over and over and over again.
Yeah, sounds like there's some unchecked stuff going on here.
Yeah, I think there definitely was, and I think he was really at this point starting to just deteriorate from the inside out.
I would say so.
So Paul reiterated that story to Richie, who by that point was essentially losing his mind with fear and guilt and probably about 472 other emotions.
Yeah, which is why you don't see a recently dug grave of a murder victim and just be like, oh, cool.
Not only that.
Don't do that, and maybe you won't be riddled with guilt and
Oh, no, not only that. So he saw that, and then he saw 2 dead bodies.
Well, that's what I mean.
Buried them.
Once you start, you're going to be led down a path that you're going to see some other and then you're going to get involved with bad people who are going to scare that out of you for the rest of your life. You already
are.
So now, it's like, dude, just don't do it.
Richie himself was up because I said like 42 times that he was essentially stalking Kathy because he was he couldn't tell her, obviously, like why he was so scared.
Oh my God. So he was literally just being a stalker.
He was just literally stalking her to the point where her family had him arrested for harassment.
Good.
That, my friends, is when she starts to unravel.
Oh no.
So Richie headed out to Ohio because the judge told him to skip town until his, quote, infatuation was over with.
Oh, okay. That's how that works?
Get out of here.
Yeah, just get out of town.
The 60s, guys.
Till you get right. Then get back. Then you can come back.
I'm like, does he have to show like a paper that says like I'm over Kathy?
That's
like,
the thing. It's
I don't get it.
Is there like some big like X-ray machine that shows if his heart goes like thump thump when she's around?
It's all good now.
Yeah.
What?
It's at a normal rate.
So his grandmother lived in Columbus, Ohio, and he was going to go stay with her for a while. So the entire time he was there, he wasn't able to contact Kathy because, no contact orders.
That whole thing.
And he was still really concerned that Kathy was going to be Charles's next target, especially now that he was gone. Because he said on one occasion, obviously we know who Charles is, but he also had like some reason to be scared, because Charles had said to him once that they should go dig up Gretchen's body and hang her by a noose on Kathy's porch to show Kathy what could happen to her if she didn't stay in line.
Whoa.
Again. He suggested that they dig up the corpse of his own ex-girlfriend, hang her on the porch of his friend's girlfriend to show her what could happen to her if she didn't stay in line.
Is this Game of Thrones? What is this?
Like what? It gives me like weird Billy and Stu vibes also somehow.
He makes me feel like he's part of the Lannisters, and I'm not here for it.
I don't even know who he's part of.
This is a lot.
I would say he's more the gross one from Harry Potter.
The gross one from Harry Potter.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen Game of Thrones, skip over this. But he gets his throat slit by Arya.
Oh,
what's his name?
Walder Frey.
Walder Frey. He gives me Walder Frey vibes.
He is a Walder Frey
because he's
type.
yucky.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, but so that's why Richie was so concerned. So one night, Richie's just sitting there with G-Ma, and he blurts out everything to this poor elderly woman.
Oh my goodness, your poor grandmother.
I mean, everything. And she literally was like, I thought that he was just drunk because I heard beer can do crazy to your mind.
Yeah, it doesn't do that crazy shit.
G-Ma, you're so pure. So she was like, if everything you're telling me is true, you need to call the police. That was the night of November 8th, 1965, and he did indeed call the police, who didn't come until the next morning, which I was a little confused about because I was like, you should probably go there like stat.
Oh, it's shocking.
Like 10-4 over. Like,
yeah, they've done such a great job so far. That's really nuts.
This is a different police department.
Yeah, honestly, at this time, I'm like, this is not out of character.
What were you guys doing at the police department?
They were just like listening to the radio.
Like, were they just vibing?
They were just listening to the radio.
Our job is to just vibe, okay?
We just vibe in the station.
So they showed up the next day, and they took Richie with them to the station. He made a full confession to them about everything that happened, and he said he could take them to where Gretchen and Wendy's bodies were, but that there might have also been a fourth girl and he didn't know where she was. But he said that everyone in town was saying that Charles had killed a fourth girl, and that was like a huge part of the reason why he had killed Gretchen. Because not only was she going to say that he had killed Aline, but this other girl as well. So they flew him out that night back to Tucson, and the very next morning he led them to where he said Gretchen and Wendy would be. Sure enough, they were there. So now they just had to get Charles, and Richie warned them that they would never get a confession out of him, because he had told Richie, quote, if I'm ever caught, I'll never confess. That way they never know, and the not knowing will torture them.
What?
Like, he said what we always assume.
He literally had, like, he just told us, like, hey, insider tip from psycho, crazy, evil sons of...
Yep.
This is why we do that.
Like, guys, how many times have we said, like, they definitely do that just to, like, make the torture last forever? And he's like, yeah.
He's like, no, that's literally what I'm doing.
He's like, I coined that term.
Yeah, I did it
that
first.
long-ass
like,
term.
First. Whoa.
He literally said that, according to Richie.
That's wildly evil.
So, remember Mary Ray French?
Yeah.
Yeah, she was arrested on November 15th, 1965 in Belton, Texas.
Good.
Richie had said that she was lying about Aline's murder, and he knew for a fact that she witnessed the entire thing, that she hadn't been sitting in the car.
I believe it.
I do too. But ultimately, she was charged with concealing and compounding a felony and being an accessory to Aline's murder. The Arizona Daily Star reported on December 21st, 1965, quote, displaying not a flicker of emotion, Mary Ray French, a slender 19-year-old brunette, heard herself sentenced yesterday to spend 4 to 5 years in state prison. She was out of prison within 3 years for good behavior.
Stop.
For good behavior and for working in prison.
Stop.
3 years.
That's a travesty.
John Saunders pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, and he got life in prison.
Good.
He was 19 years old when he was sentenced, and at his sentencing, he told the judge, "I dedicate the rest of my life to make myself a better person to live with."
Cool, it won't matter.
The judge allowed him to have Christmas with his family, and he was sent to prison the very next day.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
No.
Nobody cares.
No, not at all. I was just like, I think that's like kind of like...
No, I mean like nobody cares if you're going to become a better person because you're a terrible person.
Because it doesn't matter anymore because you've already taken a human life. So
you're in there forever.
Go yourself.
Bye.
Richie only got 1 year of probation for his entire role in the case, probably because he was the one that led them to all this. Now, both Mary and John testified in court during Charles Schmid's trial. Charles had tried to say that it was Richie who was responsible for all this.
Oh, shocked.
That's what he was planning all along. And a lot of people in town actually believed that because Richie had all the inside knowledge about all of the murders.
Yeah, and Charles would never do that.
No, never. And basically that's what it was. Like they were still under his crazy ass spell. Now, luckily, the jury did not believe that, and Charles Schmid was sentenced to death for murdering Gretchen and Mary Fritz and got an additional 50 years to life when he pleaded guilty to the second-degree murder of Aline Rowe. But then, in 1972, temporarily, like this didn't last forever, the U.S. Supreme Court declared capital punishment was unconstitutional, and so his sentence was commuted to life in prison.
All right.
Now, in June of 1697, I almost said, taking you way back.
Back in the witch
We
trials.
got in a time machine. No, in June of 1967, Smitty claimed that his lawyer convinced him to plead guilty to Aline's murder, but that her body would show that he hadn't bludgeoned her, therefore maintaining his innocence.
Probably not.
So they exhumed her body, but sure enough, she had massive skull fractures.
Yeah, of course.
It was just a way for him to waste their time and a way for him probably to relive the murder.
Yeah.
Because he was there. Like he had to go with them to show them where the body was.
That was definitely for his benefit.
There's a famous picture that we'll post associated with the case, and it's of his like giant handcuffed hands touching her skull. And he was telling them the entire time, be careful with the cranium. It's delicate. It can prove my innocence.
What?
Like, what part of you, I mean, I'm going to ask this question, but I already know the answer. Like, what part of you thought that this was going to work?
Are you kidding me?
But then let me answer that myself. I know that he didn't think this was going to work. I guarantee you he was just bored in prison and was like, how can I continue to torture everybody around me?
How can I go to the crime scene? How can I relive this whole thing? I would like to see her still.
Yeah.
That whole, oh my goodness.
Do you see the picture?
Yeah. This
Bananas.
is vile.
I'm like, why did they allow him to touch her?
Yeah, the fact that they allowed him to touch her is such a slap in the face to anyone who loved her and her. Like that is outrageously disrespectful.
You know, the second he touched her, he was just remembering everything.
Oh, for sure.
Like, and we're not even done yet. While this was in prison, he tried multiple times to escape. And on November 11th, 1972, while he was imprisoned in Tucson, he actually did escape with a good buddy that he made in prison named Raymond Hudgens. Raymond was in prison for 3 murders. Now, they successfully escaped, and they ended up in a ranch near Tempe and took on 4 hostages.
Jesus.
So they just decided to let those hostages go and split up.
Yeah.
And luckily, they were captured within a matter of days. You keep that Google images up there because when he was found, Charles Schmid was wearing a gigantic women's blonde wig.
Yep, I see it.
To the picture, you're just like, what is up there?
There's really no describing it. You have to see it yourself.
That's the thing. I don't know how to even describe it to you other than absolutely ridiculous.
He's wild looking.
Wildin'.
Like, truly wild.
In 1974, he changed his name to Paul David Ashley because he thought that might help his chances of getting rehabilitated.
No.
Just like if I have a different name. And also, like, why would you choose 3? That just proves you're psychotic.
Yeah, that's a no.
Now, when not attempting to escape from prison, Charles was actually getting really into the world of poetry, and he was actually good at it. He wrote his own poems all the time, and he got so confident that he sent some of them to a professor at the University of Arizona. The professor was actually very impressed with Charles's work and said that he was talented and he would mark up his work and correct different things and then send it back to him.
Come on, guys.
So they just became like pen pals.
Yeah, don't do that.
Now, here is the, how do you say it again? Pièce de résistance.
The pièce de résistance.
That, thank you. I added too many like laws
I like
L's
it.
to that. Now, on March 20th, 1975, Charles got into a very intense fight with 2 other inmates, and he was stabbed almost 50 times.
Whoops.
Oopsie. He got stabbed in one of his eyes. He got stabbed into the lung and also into his intestines. At the hospital, they had to remove his eye. They had to stitch up his lung, and they also had to give him a tracheotomy. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, after all they did, he still got a blood infection, and he died 10 days later on March 30th, 1975.
Man.
Peace the f out.
What a thing.
Now, his mother decided to have him buried in the prison cemetery because she was worried that if he was buried on like their plot of land, that people would just defile his grave constantly.
Yeah, for sure.
And she and his father were left with all of the legal fees that he had accumulated.
Oh.
All of the legal fees.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, Charles's case got a lot of public attention, obviously, and people all over the world were talking about how just cold and evil he was and how crazy this case was. That so many teenagers came forward, like I said, and said that they knew all about it, but never told their parents, never told police, because
that's terrible.
They were under his spell, man. So I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Smooth Talk. I've never seen it.
No.
It was inspired by him. It was also inspired by the short story that was originally inspired by the case called Where Are You Going? Where Have You Been? And that's by Joyce Carol Oates.
Oh.
So yeah.
Look at that.
That is the case of the Pied Piper of Tucson.
Was such a ride.
I don't even have words anymore.
Those poor girls.
Seriously. This is one of the most interesting cases, though, that I think I've ever covered.
It's just, it's
the amount of just like loops and bends.
Yeah,
and
loops
you get
and boops.
The mafia, you get
the fact that the mafia just made a quick like cameo.
Just like, hey, I'm here.
Like just like not like an unnamed cameo in here. Like
right?
It's just like, whoa, all right.
Then you get a prison
like,
escape.
Special guest, the mafia.
Oh, okay, cool. We'll credit you. And then the prison escape, like just all of it.
And the wig.
The wig.
The wig really rounds it all out.
Richie wrote a book, I, a Squealer. So much to unpack.
Guys, that was a lot.
It was so much.
Wow. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. So, guys, we hope you keep listening.
And we hope you
keep
it weird.
But not so worried that any of this applies to you.
Yeah.
Ever.
Just don't do any of this.
He's gross. Becky.
If you like Morbid, you can listen early and ad-free right now by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app or on Apple Podcasts. Prime members can listen ad-free on Amazon Music. Before you go, tell us about yourself by filling out a short survey at Wondery.com/survey.